All right, you maniacs. Who's still awake? It's 1 a.m. Pitt is 7-0. The Panthers blew out Syracuse 41-13 at Acrisure Stadium tonight. It's very late, but I'm still up. Hopefully you're still up. Hopefully you're still buzzing about that game. One of the more impressive performances we've seen, and actually something I'm probably going to say a bunch of times, the most impressive defensive performance I've seen maybe ever. I mean, when I think about the litany of great defensive performances I've seen in 20 years of covering this team, I'm not sure really what compares. I'll tell you what compares. As I tried to think of the best and greatest defensive performances that I've seen covering Pitt football for the past 20 years, the 13-9 game comes to mind. I mean, the 13-9 game was an exceptional defensive performance. I mean, outstanding, but probably the best I ever saw out of a Pitt team. But that defense in the 13-9 game, they didn't score any touchdowns. This defense scored not one, not two, but 3 touchdowns while recording 5 takeaways. And I mean, just an unbelievable performance, a huge, impactful performance. And I feel like we had a conversation, maybe it was on the live stream. I say last night, but I mean, it was Wednesday night. So technically it was 2 days ago because this is Friday. I think it might have been on the live show on Wednesday night that Jim and I were talking about exciting games or boring games. What's been Pitt's most boring game this season or most exciting game this season? And I said, defense can be exciting, but I mean, for a game to truly be exciting, I need offense. Like, offense is what it takes. Defense, yeah, a great, strong defensive stand. That's great, but I mean, let's be real. The real excitement comes from offense. Well, they proved me wrong tonight because apparently defense can be very exciting. Like when you get 5 interceptions and return 3 of them for touchdowns. Yeah, defense actually can be pretty exciting. I guess it still comes down to scoring touchdowns and scoring points, and that's what made this defensive performance so impressive and exciting. But yeah, defense can be exciting, and when they play like they played tonight, they can do a whole lot of damage. Look, we got a lot to talk about. We'll probably only go like an hour here because, again, it's after 1 o'clock in the morning. But Pitt is 7-0. They beat Syracuse 41-13. And this season it just keeps rolling. I don't know if you guys ever watched The Wire, but there's a point in there where they, the 2 police officers or detectives turn to each other and say, boy, this case has got some legs, doesn't she? This season has some legs. This season has some legs because it just keeps finding new ways to be interesting. And this team keeps finding new ways to win. Tonight, it was 5 interceptions. Last week, it was tons of pressure on the quarterback and 6 sacks. The North Carolina game, it was the offense coming up with an answer every time Carolina scored. The West Virginia and Cincinnati games, it was making big plays in the fourth quarter, on both sides of the ball. They just keep finding new ways to win and different ways to win and showing that they're capable of winning in different ways. And I think as you do and first things last, they got Ben Sauls, who, I mean, is out of his mind right now. Perfect 12 of 12 on the year for Ben Sauls. Kicks a 57-yarder today. He had 2 field goals, right? What was the other one? And a 49-yarder. So he's 4 of 4 from 50 yards. Plus he had a 49-yard field goal today. So, that doesn't make him 5 of 5 from 50 yards. But, and he also had a 49-yard field goal against Youngstown State. So he's 4 of 4 from 50 plus. And he's got 249. So he's 6 of 6 from 49 plus this season. That's half of the field goals he's made have been from 49 yards or deeper. I mean, Ben Sauls is out of his mind right now. And that 57-yard kick today, he just snuck it over the crossbar, but it got there. And so this is a team that right now has a kicker who is unconscious. It's got a defense that has played 2 really, really good games, put in 2 really, really good performances back to back. I mean, and then an offense that has shown what it's capable of at various points throughout the season. Maybe not so much over the last 2 games, although they had their moments tonight. The 2 touchdown passes I thought were really nice plays from Eli Holstein. But obviously, offense has a few things to figure out, and I think that's probably a big talking point that a lot of people are going to be interested in this evening. But it's just hard for me to jump into this conversation without talking about the defense, because the defense really did dominate this game. 327 total yards allowed, 321 passing yards, 6 net rushing yards, although a big chunk of that, if I can find the sacks, Pitt had 46 yards on their 4 sacks of Kyle McCord. So those come off the rushing yards. So you're looking at about 52 rushing yards, give or take, but not a whole lot of production on the ground for Syracuse. The Orange were terrible on third down, 6 of 20. They made up for that by converting 6 of 7 fourth downs, which, 6 of 20 is really good on third down. So you got that, you sub 30%. That's a good percentage there. But I mean, this was really about the big plays. This was really about the 5 interceptions, 4 of which came from linebackers, 3 of which got returned for touchdowns. I mean, that was what won this game. That was the game-changing performance. And when we get the whiskey out here in a second, you can bet it's probably the shot of the game is going to be somewhere along those lines. I'm actually a little thirsty. I think we're going to crack the beer before we get the shot. Because, yes, even though it's a Thursday night or very early Friday morning, we still, this is not Nam. There are rules. We're still going to, follow our protocol for the show. We're going to have a shot of the game, and we're going to drink a beer. I don't know if anybody else is drinking on a Thursday night, but I take that back. I know everybody else was drinking on a Thursday night because every time I walk out of the stadium, as I walk through the parking lots to get back to my car to drive home, it's the smell of stale beer everywhere, which in a weird way makes me really want a beer. And I know that I'm getting home to have a beer, but at that moment, I'm like, man, I wish I had a beer while I was walking to my car. But nevertheless, hopefully you guys are doing something to keep yourselves awake. I know our guy Ski said he's having some hot chocolate. So, hey, whatever gets you through the night, right? All right, as you know, this is the live Panther-Lair show, the live Panther-Lair Post-Game Show that we do here after every Pitt game on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We hang out and talk about the Pitt game for an hour or so. When it's not 1 o'clock in the morning, we might keep the show going for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is. When it's 1 o'clock in the morning, we'll be a little bit succinct about it. Don't forget, we're doing a live morning Pitt at 10 a.m. So there's not going to be a regular morning Pitt for you to listen to on Friday morning. You can listen to this if you didn't catch it in the evening. Either way, We'll go live at 10 a.m. We'll do a live taping of the morning Pitt just to do some, I don't want to say post-mortem because it was a win, but recap the win and talk about it a little bit more here on Friday morning at 10 a.m. So you got that, 9 hours from now, we'll be talking about this stuff again. As always, we ask you to like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you never miss any of our Pitt video content. And go check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all the Pitt coverage you can possibly handle. We got a lot of stuff there already from the game. People are still in the message boards talking about the game, and we'll have more content throughout the day on Friday and throughout the weekend leading into next week, which is a huge week with Pitt going to SMU for what should be their first game as a ranked opponent against the ranked opponent since I believe the ACC championship game when Pitt and Wake Forest were both ranked. But we got all next week to talk about that game, the SMU game, not the Wake Forest game. We have all week to talk next week to talk about that game. Tonight, it's all about Pitt-Syracuse. It's all about a blowout win, and it's all about this defense with some conversation about the offense, of course. All right, and as always, it's your comments and questions. We got a lot already rolling in over on the side of the screen there. I'm pointing the wrong way. No, that way. I don't know why I can't point the right way. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can post your comments and questions and join the conversation here. Of course, if you want to make sure your comment gets read, your question gets answered, you can be a super chatter. Click the little $sign down to the bottom of the screen. Kick a couple bucks to the podcast, which we very much appreciate, and we will be sure to read your comment and your question. There's already a lot that are posted in there. We'll try to get to as many as we can. We will definitely get to the super chatters, though. So let's do that and start there with Bill Florigen, our guy, regular contributor to the show. We appreciate him. Says, here's $5 for the show. It's way too late for me. See you on the live morning Pitt. Tomorrow, at least one team in Pennsylvania can beat Kyle McCord. Haha. Yeah, Kyle McCord really hyped him up, really had a lot of expectations for how he's been playing and how he will how he'd been playing all season and how he likely would play against Pitt's defense. had really thought he was going to be really good, and he was not. McCord finished his stat line. He completed 35 of 64 passes, so he creeped up over 50% for 321 yards and 5 interceptions. We think the 64 pass attempts was a college record for the most attempts in a game at Acrisure Stadium / Heinz Field. We think the overall record, NFL and college, was Ben Roethlisberger in that Browns playoff game. He threw like 68 passes. I thought it was Rich Gannon back in 2002. He threw 64. But our guy Chris Carter found out Ben Roethlisberger threw 68 in that other game. Either way, it doesn't matter. McCord, some of it was unlucky. The ball gets tipped up in the air and it lands in Brandon George's hands while he's laying on the ground. Some of it, he made bad reads, and Pitt's guys made great plays like Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis. It's just, another one, Jordan Bass tips the ball up in the air. PJ O'Brien grabs the interception. I mean, there were some exceptional plays by Pitt, some really bad decisions by Kyle McCord, but either way, he virtually doubled his interception total on the season with this one game. He had 6 interceptions in the first 6 games of the season, threw 5 today against Pitt's defense. And, I think we should jump into the shot of the game. Because listen, Pitt's linebackers played an unbelievable game today. All right? I'm going to give you the stats for Pitt's linebackers while I pour this shot. Pitt's linebackers, and they had, the 3 starters, Biles, Lewis, and Brandon George, plus, Braylon Lovelace and Jordan Bass, and then Nick Lappy got in, and even Jeremiah Marcelin got in, but I don't think Marcelin recorded any stats. Oh, and Cameron Lindsay. Oh, Cameron Lindsay got in. He got a tackle. I know he got in the game, but he got a tackle. So we'll add one more onto this. I had only, I forgot to check for him having a tackle. So, Pitt's linebacker stats in this game. 41 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. My friends, the Backshore Apparel shot of the game goes to all 7 of those linebackers. However many got on the field, it doesn't matter. 7, 8, 3, it doesn't matter. They played an unbelievable game. One of the best games by a Pitt position group we've seen in a long time. Certainly one of the best games by a group of Pitt linebackers that we've seen. And I don't even know how long, probably since the 13-9 game. They killed it today. 41 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 interceptions, 3 touchdowns. Pitt linebackers, you deserve the Backshore Apparel shot of the game. Yeah. It hits different at 1 a.m, I'll tell you. Look, the Brandon George interception. I'm gonna get to the comments because we got a lot, and we got a lot that I want to get to. But I as I was walking out of the game, I couldn't stop thinking about this. Thinking about the Brandon George interception. Ball gets tipped. It's off the receiver's hands. It's off the defense's hands. It flies in the air, and there's Brandon George laying on the ground, arms outstretched. And the ball falls to him, and he catches it this far off the ground for an interception. It was a remarkable play that I don't even know how he made. And it was a remarkable play that that wasn't, you could say, well, that was a bit of preparation and game planning because they were in good position to break up the pass and all of that. But there's no game planning and preparation that puts a guy on the ground laying there with his arms outstretched, ready to catch the ball in his hands, 4 inches off the ground. There's no preparation for that. You practice tip drills or something like that. But they didn't go over that in film this week. And I kept thinking about that play, thinking, boy, what a wild play that was. What an unbelievable interception that was. That's just the kind of thing that just doesn't happen all the time. And it occurred to me that, you know what? Maybe this is just that kind of season for Pitt. Maybe this is just the kind of season where, When you're trying to convert a fourth down and you're trailing on the road at Cincinnati in the fourth quarter, Cincinnati does some disconcerting signals and gives you the first down conversion. Maybe this is just the kind of season where you throw up a prayer to your number 4 wide receiver, or maybe number 5 wide receiver, who hadn't gotten a target all season. It's the third game of the year, and you throw up a prayer to him in the end zone with triple coverage, and he catches it for a touchdown. Maybe it's just the type of season where kicker comes out for a 40-yard field goal and boots it and misses it. Maybe it's just the type of season where the ball gets tipped in the air and falls into the hands of your linebacker laying on the ground. Now, this is not to take anything away from what Pitt has accomplished or what the players have done. I could be laying on the ground. You could drop a football into my hands, and I probably wouldn't catch it. Even when we talk about like the Cincinnati disconcerting signals penalty, or even like the Dejon Reynolds touchdown catch, all these things didn't happen in a vacuum. They were surrounded by great plays as the team battled to build those comebacks and come back and win. The Cal game, it comes down to a field goal because the defense does such an incredible job holding Cal to 15 points. So you don't take anything away from that, but unless you're at the very top of the sport, and even for some teams that are at the very top of the sport with the elite talent, the best teams in the country, you're going to need some lucky bounces. You're going to need the ball to fall into your hands sometimes if you're really going to win. And maybe for Pitt, this is that season. Maybe for Pitt, this is that kind of season where the ball falls into your hands a couple times. And it doesn't need to happen every game, and it doesn't need to happen multiple times per game or anything like that. But maybe the ball just, every now and then it drops into your hands. Every now and then Cincinnati hands you a first down conversion. Every now and then, Cal makes some weird decisions on 2-point conversions and misses a 40-yard field goal. Every now and then you get the luck to bounce your way a little bit. You get the luck to break your way a little bit. Every now and then, this football, which has 2-pointed ends and bounces in a lot of weird ways, every now and then it bounces your way. And maybe for Pitt, that's what this season is. And I'm very much a believer that you make your own luck, and all this stuff, opportunity meets preparation or whatever, blah blah blah. But again, I'm not taking anything away from what these players have done, but maybe this is just that year. Maybe they're just having one of those years where things just kind of go your way. They certainly went their way tonight, with some incredible, outstanding individual performances and team performance from the entire defense. But maybe that, the ball just falls into his hands. Like, how many times have you seen a play like that? How many times have you seen a guy catch an interception laying on the ground? And it happened. Eli Holstein throws an interception, there's a roughing the passer penalty. Nate Yarnell throws a pass and gets batted up in the air. He catches it himself. Doesn't give up an interception. Maybe this team might be a little bit charmed. Maybe they have some good luck on their side. And that's not to say that they're not talented, because look, I think right now this defense is playing at a pretty high level. I think they're surging at some key spots, some important spots. I think the pass rush continues to improve and the defensive line continues to get more push up front. I think the linebackers are living up to the potential that I thought they had, and we talked about them having, and maybe even exceeding the potential we thought they had. I think the secondary is really rounding in the form. The safeties are really solid. I thought Rashad Battle and Rylan Gandy played really well today. Some excellent pass breakups. How about a Pat Narduzzi defense faced a quarterback who threw the ball more than 60 times and didn't take a single pass interference penalty until the final 2 minutes of the game or 4 minutes of the game or whatever it was? That's got to be some kind of record. No pass interference penalties until the final 4 minutes of the game? Shoot, I should have made that the shot of the day, or the shot of the game. That's unbelievable. It was Pitt's night. This was Pitt's night. Things went Pitt's way. Everything that could break one way or the other broke Pitt's way. And to that extent, it's been Pitt's season. And that's why they're 7-0. That's why they're currently ranked in the top 20 and should be ranked in the top 15 when the polls come out on Sunday. And that's a simple, and I honestly believe that. Like, I don't want to hear about resumes anymore. I don't want to hear about who you've played anymore, anything like that. If you're a power conference team and you're 7-0, you're now past the halfway point of the season, and you are undefeated. You have not lost a game. you should be in the top 15. It's not 3-0 anymore, 2-0, or even 4-0. If you can get past the halfway point of the season without losing a game, you have earned a spot in the top 15. I mean, I think that's indisputable. They shouldn't be behind teams with 2 losses, God forbid. And probably shouldn't be behind, I mean, there's only a handful of teams I would say that are 1 loss that should be ahead of a 7-0 power conference team, whoever it might be. I would say the same thing about Indiana. I would say the same thing about Iowa State. I would say the same thing. BYU might be 5-0. So, but even if they get to 6-0, I mean, they should be at least a top 20 team. I would say the same thing about any of these teams. If you're a power conference team and you've gotten to 7-0, you've played, almost half, if not more, of your games against conference competition. I mean, you should be a top 15 team, just by virtue of being 7-0 in a power conference. I don't know where Pitt's going to end up. It's going to depend on games that happen around them. I feel like I wrote down. Oh, yeah. So Pitt's 19. Ole Miss is 18. They host Oklahoma. Boise State is 17. They are at UNLV tonight. Possible upset alert there. Kansas State hosts Kansas. Kansas State is 16. Alabama's 15. They're hosting Missouri. And then A&M is 14. They're hosting LSU. LSU is number 8. So, I mean, there's some possible losses in there. And after Liberty lost to Kennesaw State, I mean, we're really going to say that any game is not a possible loss. But Boise at UNLV, that's a dicey one. Look, Alabama against Missouri. Alabama is very much not, or Alabama is very much vulnerable. Alabama can be beat. They've shown that. And they have 2 losses already this season. Missouri only has 1 loss, and they're ranked below Alabama. But, I mean, that's absolutely a game that Missouri can win. And then A&M against LSU, top 15 team playing a top 10 team. The game's at A&M, so could go either way. But I think there are a number of losses there where you could easily justify moving into the top 15. I think even if most of those teams win, I don't know how you can have a 7-0 team from the ACC ranked below a 2-loss team from another conference, another power conference. I just don't see that rationale. But, I mean, we don't need to talk about the rankings and the polls right now. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that when the polls come out on Sunday, and then we could talk about it on the Monday edition of the Morning Pit. But I want to get back to the comments and questions just to get all these super chatters in. You guys are awesome. RJ Seaman 38 says, great game. Wow. Going to bed just beaming with pride. Thank you for your support, sir, for being a super chatter. Another Wombat says, a few bucks from my new account. We are 7-0. Yeah, absolutely. 7-0 Pitt, guys. I mean, I know it's almost 1:30 in the morning, but Pitt's 7-0. I was 3 years old the last time Pitt was 7-0. And I'm no spring chicken, friends. OB is a super chatter. We appreciate your support. Says odds of the college football playoff. I don't know. I don't know. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about that. A lot of people are going to be asking about that. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to make a case just for Pitt to get into the top 15. I don't think we're getting them into the top 12 yet. But, this game at SMU next Saturday is going to be just gigantic. I mean, just gigantic. An absolute monster of a game for Pitt in terms of the opportunity it presents to go on the road, to go face what should be a ranked conference opponent. Trying to bring up the schedule here. SMU is at Duke on Saturday night, so that's an interesting primetime game to watch. SMU ranked number 22 right now. If they can win at Duke, which I think they should, they're going to be 7-1. They're going to climb maybe into the top 20. So you're going to have a top 20 matchup on the road against a conference opponent. What a monster opportunity. If you win that game, you get to 8-0. Now, I think you're realistically talking about what can happen over those final 4 games and what that could mean for your possibility of getting into the college football playoffs. It's not a conversation I'm ready to have just quite yet, if only because there are some major tests lurking out there at SMU, Clemson at home, at Louisville. Those are gigantic tests. They're still hanging out there, and it's not to say that Pitt hasn't passed tests yet. They won in Chapel Hill for the first time ever. They had an undefeated non-conference schedule for the first time ever. They won on the road against a Big 12 opponent and then beat a Big 12 opponent at home. And they've been tested. They've won in different ways. They've played lots of different games and won in lots of different ways. So I don't want to say they haven't been tested, but the biggest tests of the season are still left in the schedule. The biggest tests of the season are in the final 5 games. And it starts next weekend when they go to SMU. Now, if they can win that one, remind me on the post-game show, and we'll talk about what it would take for Pitt to get into the college football playoff. But for now, I can't quite go down that road just yet. But their odds improve. Their odds improve every time they win a game, right? So getting to 7-0, their odds are even better than they were at 6-0. There's somebody, Kelly's Ratings or somebody on Twitter who says, for all the teams that have a shot at an at-large bid, who have done enough thus far to put themselves in position for an at-large bid of the college football playoff, how many more wins they would need in order to guarantee it for themselves. And I think Pitt, prior to tonight, was in the tier of needing at least 4 wins to guarantee themselves a legitimate shot at an at-large bid, which would have been a 10-2 record. Now they're at 7 wins, so you would think that number will drop to 3. I don't know how accurate that is or anything like that, but I mean, I wouldn't even sit here and say you need to shoot for 10 wins. I mean, shoot, man. Shoot for 12, right? Our old friend Michael B. shows up. It has been a while. He says, hey, Chris, it's been a while. I got to say, I'm so psyched about this team, and like everyone else, never expected Pitt to be this good. My question is, why do you think the defense now looks so great? And any Eli news? As far as Eli Holstein, Panthers said he'll be fine. Said Holstein was jumping around in the locker room and excited. Said something like, he made it sound like they were being a bit precautionary by taking Eli Holstein out of the game. Said something like Holstein thought he had dirt in his eye, but it turned out to be something more, which is a little bit curious. Although when Holstein was coming off, he as he walked off the field, he called the timeout and was sort of waving at his eyes. He took his helmet off and it was kind of waving at his eyes. It looked like he had something. We in the press box were like, oh, did he lose a contact or something like that? Watching the replay on television, because we have TVs in the press box. Watching the replay on television, it looked like maybe he hit his head off the ground. Maybe that. I don't know. But Panthers Seemed optimistic about Eli Holstein. Said he'll be fine. He was jumping around and having fun in the locker room, so it seems okay. It sounded like they were trying to be precautionary. Why is the defense improved? Like what? Let me see the wording of your question there, Michael B. My question, why do you think the defense now looks so great? I mean, I think there's a natural progression. Like if you have talented players and good coaches, even when you're bringing in inexperienced young players, they'll grow and develop and get better over time. And so Pitt replacing 9 starters on defense, there was going to be a period of transition. It was just a question of what they would transition to. It was a question of how high that ceiling was. I think we were all concerned about the defensive line, and I think rightfully so. I think there was optimism about the linebackers, at least from me. I know in the past, my track record of hyping linebackers, particularly outside linebackers, is not great, but I definitely hyped this group. I was excited about Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles, and I tried to talk about how good I thought those guys could be. I think they've even exceeded my expectations and predictions and what I thought their potential was. I think they've gone beyond it with how they've played through the first 7 games, but that's been a big part of it. Look, I think you could make a legitimate case that this is the most impactful group of linebackers Pitt has had under Pat Narduzzi. I sound like I'm stating the obvious when we're coming off a game where the linebackers had 4 interceptions. Obviously, that it's the most impactful group of linebackers Pitt has had under Narduzzi. They've never had any linebackers that had that many interceptions in a game. But I mean, I think it's interesting. You look back to Narduzzi's first year with Matt Galambos and Mike Caprera and those guys. I mean, Galambos and Caprera put up decent stats that year in 2015. 5.5 tackles for loss and 4 sacks and a couple interceptions, things like that. They put up decent numbers. Nobody has come close to what these guys are doing, what Lewis and Biles and to be honest, Braylon Lovelace and Brandon George are doing. And I'll even add in Jordan Bass, who played a lot today. I just had the defensive stats open on Pro Football Focus. They recorded 32 snaps for Jordan Bass, which is probably, it's a season high. The only game that I can think last year that he would have gotten close to that, he played a lot at Wake Forest. He played 52 snaps at Wake Forest. So it's the second most snaps he's played in his career, with 32 snaps today. And I thought he was really good. I thought he played really well, made an impact, did a lot of positive things. And we hadn't really seen that out of Jordan Bass yet. But I think we saw it a lot today. I think he showed up in a big time when he would come in to replace Kyle Lewis. But, those guys are just, they're playing like the athletes we thought they were. We had high expectations for those guys when Pitt was recruiting them. We heard good things from the Pitt coaches about those guys throughout training camp and everything like that. And they're living up to it and exceeding it and playing really well. I think we had a lot of confidence that the safeties would be good, so I think that's been more or less on par with what we expected. But then the new corners. I mean, you're replacing three guys in Marquez Williams and MJ Devonshire and AJ Woods, who all played a ton at Pitt, and they're gone, and you're bringing in guys who haven't played much at all. And I think Rylan Gandy and Rashad Battle have been pretty good. And I think they were really good tonight. I think Tamon Lynham has been pretty solid for them. And then they got a lot of snaps for Tamarian Crumpley and Noah Bigelow, and Shadarian Harrison even got in the game. So, you got extra playing time there for your corners. You're developing that depth. I just think it's a natural progression. Yeah, they replaced 9 starters. And those guys have taken some time coming along. But Cal game, Jimmy Scott gets 3 sacks. The linebackers obviously do what they did today, although they've been doing that kind of all year, I think. I think the defensive tackles continue to get better and make more and more of an impact. I thought the whole defensive line made an impact in this game and the Cal game. It's just, again, if you recruited the right guys and you're good coaches, this is what should happen. It's the nature of college sports to have a year where you're replacing a lot of starters, where you have a lot of inexperience. Every few years, it's going to happen. Maybe it'll happen even more nowadays with the transfer portal, where you're losing more guys and you're bringing in more new guys. Maybe it'll happen even more that you'll have more, a lot of inexperienced guys in a given season. But I mean, it's the nature of college sports. It's cyclical in terms of personnel. And so you'll have that, but the way it's supposed to work, if you've done your job as coaches, if you've recruited the right kids, if you've evaluated the right kids, and if you've developed them properly, it should work like it's working right now, where they get better week to week to week. And it's hard to think they'll get better from what they did today. And I don't think they'll have another 5-interception game. I don't think the linebackers will have another 4-interception game. I don't think there'll be another game with 3 pick sixes. But I do think, they're going to just keep making plays and getting better and better and more exciting and more exciting. Also, shout out to me, the Rasheem Biles pick 6. I guess I predicted it to some extent on the live show on Wednesday night and then maybe on the morning pit on Thursday morning. The reality is I've been either quietly or silently predicting a Rasheem Biles pick 6 like every game this season. So it finally came to pass, and he came in the first quarter and came on the first drive. Heck of a way to start the game. And great play by Rasheem Biles. Let's see. John Jingleheimer Schmidt says, how did this Pitt defense turn things around? They were a liability in the first few games, and now I'm more confident in scoring points when they're on the field. Yeah, Pitt's defense outscored all the offenses today. There was a point, I think at halftime, Pitt's linebackers had more yards than either offense, Syracuse or Pitt. I think Pitt's linebackers at halftime had 127 yards. Syracuse had 123 and Pitt had 83. So, yeah, that kind of tells the story. But I mean, to your question, about how did Pitt's defense turn things around? It's like what I was saying. There's nothing magical that changed. Okay, it didn't all of a sudden become, wow, these guys figured it out, or the Pitt coaches figured it out, or they started teaching something different, or they coached something different. it's just a natural progression. If you've recruited the right guys, if you've developed them well, they're going to get better over the course of time. And I think that's what you're seeing with this Pitt defense so far. And that's why they're playing at such a high level now. Each week is going to be a new challenge. Each week is going to be an opportunity to get better. And each week, could see them take a step back. I think that's the other thing that comes with inexperienced players. So you're always watching for that to potentially happen. But, I think with the defense in particular, I think week by week, they just keep getting better. Adam Brandt is a super chatter. I apologize, Adam. I don't see your comment. I got to look for it. It seems like my computer's freezing up again. I don't know why this keeps happening while we're doing live streams. I apologize for this. Freezing up a little bit on just trying to scroll through. Can't really figure out why we're having this issue. Let's see. Okay, I think we're back. Let me see if I've got... all right. I'm trying to scroll through the super chats. Adam Brandt, I don't see what your comment was. I see that you were a super chatter. I'm going to try and scroll through and see if I can find you in here. But we got one that came in from Kramer and Hyde. Says, we're looking ahead to the Big Two matchups with Clemson and SMU. But do you foresee Virginia, Louisville, and Boston College posing a matchup issue? H2P, and come see us live tomorrow at Sobel's Brewery in Jeanette. Plug. All right, Kramer and Hyde, you get to give your plug for sure. At where is it? Sobel's Brewery? I don't know Sobel's, but sounds cool. If you're going to be in Jeanette, go check out Kramer and Hyde. They're Pitt fans. As far as those other games, Virginia, Louisville, Boston College. I mean, I think Louisville is a big challenge. It's going to be on the road. I think Jeff Brom is really good. I know Pitt beat Louisville last year, but I think he's really good at his job. And Tyler Shugg has been just okay, but they have a really good running back. I think they're always going to have good offensive skill guys, and I think they have, like I say, a great coach who I think can really get them ready and really coach them up. And so, that one's going to be a challenge. Virginia, I think, has been better than expected. I think Virginia has really shown up and impressed people. I think they've been resilient. They've been a tougher out than a lot of people expected them to be. And so that one, you keep an eye on that, but I think that game's at home. So you feel like you should have a good chance there. And then Boston College, on the road, I think Castellanos is still, I still think he's pretty good. I know he hasn't really played great lately, but I think he's pretty good. So that could be a challenge. Look, every game could be tough. I think Pitt should be able to take care of business against Boston College and Virginia. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by my streaming software slowing down and lagging a little bit. I'm really getting annoyed about why this keeps happening. I might have to just stream through StreamYard from now on, so we don't run into this issue. But there are tough games out there. I think obviously Clemson, SMU, and Louisville will be the three toughest ones. Virginia and Boston College, though, I mean, it's not to be too cliched, but every game is going to be a test. Every game is going to be a tough one, and they can't, if they can't get the offense figured out, it's going to be this is going to be a challenge. Don't really know what's going on with the computer now, and I apologize for some of these issues. Looks like maybe the issues with YouTube. I'm not sure. I hope we're still streaming on this. This seems to keep happening. Let's see. Talking about ads. I don't know if it's really about ads or anything like that. Anyway, let's scroll through through a few other comments that were made here. Because my YouTube stream reloaded. So yeah, I see it. We're still live and still streaming. I appreciate that. Let's see what everybody else is saying here. RJC Man 38 says Eli will be great. People need to relax. Yeah, look, I think the thing with Eli Holstein right now is that for 2 games in a row, he's had some struggles. You know what I mean? Like there have been some issues 2 games in a row. He hasn't really looked great. He kind of had stretches in the Cincinnati and West Virginia games where he didn't look great. The first half against Cincinnati, he was pretty bad. Like he was not good. He turned it on and played well in the final 20 minutes, of course, and ended up helping win that game, or really won that game. But he didn't look good in the first half. The West Virginia game, he had some struggles again. Didn't get off to a great start. He was a little better. I mean, even in the Carolina game, he throws the pick 6, right? And so he's had his ups and downs. He's played like a redshirt freshman at a lot of points over the course of the season so far. What we've seen in the last 2 games is, some of those struggles without a lot of positive plays to offset them. I thought the 2 touchdown passes tonight were really good. I thought some of his runs were good. But then there were passes where it just, let's see if I can find, there was one, it might have been the play that was intercepted that, ended up coming back on a roughing the passer where he just needed to run. You drop back and you don't like what you see. I mean, you have to have that internal clock. Coaches always talk about the internal clock for a quarterback, right? You got to have that internal clock. You got to be willing to, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? You have to tuck the ball and run, particularly for a quarterback like Holstein who can make plays with his legs. Kyle McCord didn't really want to do that. He didn't seem like he was very good at doing that, although he picked up at least one first down, like running, not just talking about like the tush-push sneaks, but picked up at least one first down running. Excuse me. So that's not really Kyle McCord's game, but Eli Holstein can make those plays. Excuse me. And he needs to make those plays. Particularly if he drops back and doesn't like what he sees, doesn't have a lot of great options open, tuck it and run. Like tuck it and run. Get a couple yards. Don't take a sack. Don't put the ball in jeopardy. Tuck it and run. Run for 3 yards and slide. That's fine. That's a perfectly good play. It's better than an incomplete pass, and it's better than a sack. And it's definitely better than an interception where you just put the ball up there and see what happens. So Eli Holstein, oh my goodness. There's something stuck in my throat. Eli Holstein needs to do a better job in that respect. And I don't think he's been doing a great job this year, or these last 2 games, of making those decisions. He had points like that in the first 4 or 5 games, but he was able to overcome them. He was able to make good plays. He was able to sort of round himself into form by the end of the game to lead the team to victory. Carolina overall, I thought he played a pretty good game, but these last 2 haven't been so hot, and he needs to get that taken care of. So I share your optimism, RJC man, that Eli will be fine. I still kind of believe that. I think he's a redshirt freshman quarterback who's still learning how to play. I think he was so good right off the bat that you just sort of assumed he was going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every game, because for a while there he was throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every game. Now, I don't know if it's because there's tape out there on him or just the level of competition is getting a bit tougher, but it's become harder for him, and he seems more indecisive. He's not, to use a Frank Signetti term, he's not making decisive decisions. He needs to do a bit better job of that, and I think he will. I think he can, and I'm pretty confident that he will. It's part of his growth process. So when we talk about the growth and development and progress and of the defensive players, the young defensive players who haven't played much in the past, the inexperienced guys. I mean, it's the same thing with Holstein. I mean, he's a young, inexperienced player who needs to grow and develop and progress like some of those other guys. And I think he will. I think he can, and I'm pretty confident that he will. Green says Eli definitely missed 3 wide open guys for touchdowns on 2 different drives at least, but 7-0 is 7-0. I'm not going to get too ungrateful. We won 3 games last year. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree for the most part. Square Biz says, when you said earlier it would be a close game and the over would hit, I knew the opposite would happen. Look, here's the thing. My predictions are terrible. We almost got, Jim and I both predicted Pitt would score 38 points. And until Ben Saul's, 57-yard field goal, we were pretty much right on the money on that one. But Jim said it would be 38-35. I said 38-28. So we both missed the mark on how good Syracuse would be. I think the over-under probably, what did it close at? 62 and a half. There ended up being 54 points. Okay. If you want to point out that I did not correctly predict that Pitt would have 5 interceptions and 3 pick sixes, you got me. Guilty as charged. And you know what? And I said the only surprising outcome will be a blowout one way or the other. So I guess I was surprised. And yes, you know what? I was surprised during this game. Shout out to me, though, for calling the Rasheem Biles pick 6. I predicted a Rasheem Biles pick 6. We'll have to check the Guess the First Touchdown contest and see if anybody had a Rasheem Biles 35-yard pick 6 in there. I doubt it, but it would be pretty sweet if somebody did. Super Chatterer here. Grant Sakuda says, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but what is Pitt's ceiling? I don't know, man. I don't know. So I put up a post on the Panther-Lair.com message boards Thursday afternoon. I have to say Thursday because I don't know if I want to say yesterday or today or whatever it was, but Thursday afternoon I put up a post. I was just going stir crazy, waiting for this game to happen. I had a bunch of thoughts, so I just put them on the message board. And the first thing I said was Pitt's going to lose a game this season. It's going to happen. Maybe more than once. I might have even said probably more than once. I took a lot of crap for that. Understandably so. People are excited about the game. They're excited about the team being 6-0. They're excited to get ready for this Syracuse game. They don't want to hear somebody come out and say Pitt's going to lose a game this season. Now, the rest of what I wrote was about what they need to do to avoid losing games and how exciting it is that they're in this position and all these different things. But yeah, it was the first thing in the post was Pitt's going to lose a game. And I'm still pretty sure at some point they will. I'm not talking myself into them going 12-0 just yet. But damn, they just keep finding ways to win. 7 games, they've found different ways to win in every one of these games. And when you keep showing different ways to win, when you keep finding different ways to win, when you keep finding ways to manufacture victory, no matter the situation, if you're down 3 touchdowns in the third quarter, if you're down by 10 in the final 5 minutes, if the other team scores and you just have to answer and stay ahead of them, if you need to win a slugfest and hold the other team to less than 17 points, if you just need to go out and score defensive touchdowns. I mean, they have done different things in almost every game this season to find ways to win. And, unless you are the best offense in the country, or the best defense in the country, or the best team in the country, or whatever, give me the team that can find ways to win. This team has shown that they can find ways to win. Will they find a way to win every game? I don't know. I can't bet on that. I think we underestimate how hard it is to go undefeated, about how really, truly challenging it is to go out there 12 Saturdays in a row, or 12 weeks in the fall and not make that crucial mistake that costs you a game once. How hard it is to get out there and win every single game. I think it's really tough. I think that's why it doesn't happen all that often. It happens, but it doesn't happen all that often. It's why nobody's gone undefeated in the NFL since whenever the Dolphins did in 1972 or whatever it was. Because it's really, really hard. It's hard to go undefeated. And I think you have to be really good and really lucky to go undefeated. And I think this Pitt team is pretty good, and they've been pretty lucky. I don't know if they're good enough or lucky enough to go undefeated. So when you talk about what the ceiling is, shoot, man, it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll say the ceiling's 11-1. Just because I don't think they'll go undefeated. But if you had asked me 6 hours ago, well, not even 6, like 10 hours ago, I would have said that the floor is 9-3, hopefully, and that the ceiling is probably 10-2. Well, now I would say the ceiling is probably 11-1 because they just keep finding ways to win. Let's see here. Pitt, I see Pitt wins post here. I thought it was really cool. ESPN did a show at Pitt, but did any fans show up for ESPN at the Cathedral of Learning? I can't find any video anywhere. Yeah, absolutely. They did. Yeah, there were a ton of fans there. There were a ton of fans at the Cathedral for Sports Center today. It was really cool. Adam Brandt says, the weirdest Pitt game I've ever seen. Both the offense and the defense beat Syracuse. Just keep winning and keep this going. This team has arrived a year early and is showing a real special streak. On to SMU. It's funny, like defense scored 3 touchdowns, but even without that, Pitt's offense outscored Syracuse 20-13. So, we don't need to do any rationalization or explain it away and say, well, without, can they win a game when they don't get 3 pick sixes? Well, they would have won this game without the 3 pick sixes. I mean, who knows what those drives would have turned out to for Syracuse, but they still, the offense outscored Syracuse's offense. So there's that. Jason Martell says the linebackers are crazy athletic. They're able to play the run but cover a ton of ground to drop into passing lanes and read keys. They really are. And we talked about these guys when they were getting recruited. Rasheem Biles and Jordan Bass and Kyle Lewis and Braylon Lovelace, and how these guys were all, high school safeties and wide receivers and stuff like that. I mean, they didn't all play safety. Braylon Lovelace played middle linebacker because he was the best player at Leechburg, and they needed him in the middle of the defense. But, he could have been a safety. And Rasheem Biles was a safety. Kyle Lewis played all over the field. Jordan Bass was like a playmaking wide receiver and a safety. And, if you followed recruiting and if you followed like our coverage of it when those guys were getting recruited, I mean, this story is one that we've been telling for about 3 years now about who these guys are, the types of players they are, and how they fit into Pitt's defense and how they represent sort of this, I don't want to say like transition toward trying to get more athletic players at linebacker. I think they've always wanted athleticism at linebacker, but they really recruited a certain type of player in the last few years at linebacker, and it's guys that look and play like Rasheem Biles, Kyle Lewis, Braylon Lovelace, Jordan Bass. And that's what they've really been going after. And you see it on the field. You see how they played. You see how they've excelled. You see the success they've had. It's because of that athleticism, because of that explosiveness. Because it's one thing to be explosive and athletic enough to make the interceptions they made today, but all 3 of them were really impressive returns as well. 35 yards for for Biles, 59 yards for Kyle Lewis. I think 33 for Braylon Lovelace. I mean, like, long interception returns where they're dodging guys and running away from them like they're running backs or wide receivers or something. It's impressive to see, and it's a testament to their athleticism, their speed, and their explosiveness. And that's the kind of players they were recruited to be. Sacrificing maybe size a little bit, although all of those guys have gotten huge. But as recruits, they weren't as big as they weren't as big as like some traditional linebacker prospects you would see. I mean, I think about even like a guy like Bengali Kamara, because the reality is Kamara and Solomon DeShields were, I mean, they were like the first group that was recruited along these lines. I mean, both guys were like receivers and safeties in high school. Kamara, some schools backed off him because they thought he was either too slow to play safety or, too small to play linebacker. But Pitt saw a potential body type and skill set that could work at these outside linebacker positions. And no, it didn't work out with Kamara. DeShields ended up transferring, but it was that mentality that led them to recruit those guys, and that mentality carried over to recruiting Biles and Lovelace and Lewis and Bass. And you're seeing it on the field. You're seeing how it plays out, and they had a huge game. Like I said at the beginning, maybe the most impressive defensive performance I've ever seen from a Pitt team that I covered. I mean, it's been 20 years, and there are a few that I would put up there with this game, probably like the 13-9 game. But again, like I said, Pitt's defense didn't score any touchdowns in the 13-9 game. Jason Martell also says, shout out to the corners. They've been playing well on an island and tend to go a little overlooked. Yeah, I think they've also been, I think the corners have been really good. Let's see. Scrolling through here, we just got a few more minutes, and then we're going to turn it off and go to bed. Still got a couple hundred people on here. I appreciate you guys for hanging out. I know it's almost 2:00 in the morning on a Thursday night, early Friday morning, but it means a lot to me that you guys are all hanging out here, joining for the post-game show. I'm sure you have better things to do, like go to sleep, but I do this so we can all hang out and talk, and I appreciate everybody who tunes in. Green says, I hope the SMU game's at 12 o'clock. No prime time, no hype, no nothing. Just get in there and win. I mean, I hope the game's at noon because it just works for my schedule a lot better. John Krasovich says, I thought the Pitt-Syracuse game would be closer. Yeah, I did too. I thought Kyle McCord would have a lot more success. I thought the passing game for Syracuse would have a lot more success. And I thought Pitt's passing game would have a lot more success than it did. Eli Holstein finished, let's get his stats out here. We haven't really talked about it. 11 of 15 for 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Look, Pitt only had the ball. Should know this off the top of my head. Possession time, 18 minutes. Less than 19 minutes of possession. Whereas Syracuse held the ball for more than 41 minutes. Pretty big contrast there. But when you're going like back-to-back drives because you keep getting interceptions and returning them for touchdowns, you end up keeping your defense on the field for a long time. They played some Iron Man defense. Well, not Iron Man defense because they actually rotated a ton. They had a lot of guys playing out there. They got Tamarian Crumpley in with the corners. Cruz Brookins played a bit with the safeties. And this was before the last 2 drives when they really emptied the bench. They had Noah Bigelow out there with the corners, and Jesse Anderson played with the safeties. The freshmen Jeremiah Marcelin and Cameron Lindsay were out there playing with the linebackers. David Ojebwe was out there getting snaps. I mean, they rotated a lot and got a lot of – and I feel like they rotated a lot, at least among the defensive line. I feel like in mid-drive, they did more rotations than they typically do. They'll rotate sometimes mid-drive, but I feel like they did even more of that during this game, probably to try and keep those guys as fresh as possible. Let's see. Just scrolling down here. Brock01 says, nice to see Chief Borders have a good game with his former coach calling the game. Yeah, Chief Borders. I don't know who you mean. Dan Mullen. Chief Borders. I'm looking at the stat sheet. He had 1 tackle assist, 1 pass breakup, and 1 quarterback hurry. I thought he did well. I thought it was probably his best game. I thought he made a positive impact, more of a positive impact than he's made all season. Maybe it's the start of something for Chief Borders as well. Maybe, the Cal game was the start of something for Jimmy Scott. Maybe this is the start of something for Chief Borders. Carolina game was the start of something for Sean Fitzsimmons. Maybe this game can jumpstart Chief Borders a little bit. I wonder what Nate Matlack can do to buy a sack. Dude just cannot get there. On Pro Football Focus, they actually only credited Matlack with 1 quarterback pressure. Sincere Edwards, Rasheem Biles, Jimmy Scott, and Nakai Johnson were credited with 3 each. Kyle Lewis, Chief Borders were credited with 2. and then a bunch of guys were credited with 1. They finished with 27 quarterback pressures, which that's early. PFF might change some of that, but according to Pro Football Focus, that's the most Pitt has recorded in a single season. That's the most quarterback pressures. I think they had 26 against Cal. They had 27 earlier tonight, or last night, or earlier this morning. However you want to classify it. Let's see if there's any other chats to jump in here. Here, I'll leave it on this. We'll read a couple more here. JSR862 says the DBs actually seem to be turning their head back to look for the ball a lot more recently than in the past, which is the biggest gripe in years past. Yep. I think there's a Clemson fan in here. Not really sure. Bill F. We'll leave it on Bill F's comment. Says, this team has the ingredients to keep the winning streak going into the Virginia game and beyond, but they'll need to start better on offense against SMU and Clemson to make it happen. Yeah, I think, it's really going to be about the offense. I mean, probably said that coming into this game as well, and it ended up being about the defense. Although, I was on that ACC network show, ACC PM yesterday, before the Pitt game. And said that this game could, this is back when I thought the game was going to be relatively close. I said it probably would come down to which team could make more plays on defense, and I think that ended up being right. I wasn't entirely right about the circumstances, but I mostly ended up being right about that one. So, huge plays from Pitt's defense, a couple of timely touchdowns from the offense, some monster field goals from Ben Sauls. They had it clicking on a lot of cylinders. Maybe not all, but a lot of cylinders to get a 41-13 win over Syracuse at Acrisure Stadium. It was a good Thursday night on the North Shore. Beautiful weather. Good outcome for the home team. And your Pitt Panthers are 7-0. It's crazy. There are 9 undefeated teams in the country. Pitt's one of them. There's a couple teams that are off this weekend. Let me see it. I forget who's off. It doesn't matter. But there's 9 undefeated teams in the country. Pitt's one of them. And no matter what happens this weekend, Pitt is still going to be on that list come Monday. Some of the other teams might drop off, but we're down to single digits of undefeated teams. And your Pitt Panthers, they're on that list. It's wild times, man. It's wild times. All right, you maniacs. I appreciate you guys staying up and talking for Pitt sports for an hour. Don't forget, look, at 10 a.m., like 8 hours from now, we're going to do another live stream. We're going to be live right here for the Morning Pit. It'll be at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com to talk about this after we get a few hours of rest. And we will, we'll recap things a little bit more, since I'm not going to end this live stream and tape a new Morning Pit. We will just do it live in the morning. Everybody can get some coffee and have fun. We had our beer and whiskey tonight. We'll have coffee in the morning. We'll talk a little more Pitt sports for you right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. In the meantime, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, to get all your Pitt sports coverage, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And, like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Pitt wins 41-13. Panthers are 7-0. Oh, my goodness. Who would have thought it? All right. Like and subscribe. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of whatever's left in this day for you. Get some sleep. We'll talk to you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.